As I'm sure you're aware, the second Republican presidential primary debate was last night, and I want to break down a few moments. We won't go through a ton, but a few moments. And we'll first get to, I guess, what I would consider to be the only sort of notable moment that made my ears perk up. Because besides that, this debate was, while not necessarily a snooze fest, because a lot went on, there was a lot of shouting over each other and a lot of lies told, obviously, and all sorts of different things, nothing of note beyond what we're used to within these sorts of settings. And no one really changed the game. No needles were moved, I guess you could say. And that was very, very clear. Trump is going to be really happy, unfortunately, with the way this played out. No one grabbed support away from him. And even in between one another, I don't think anyone got these massive attacks that will take down someone else's support. So in that sense, a snooze fest. Except I did, like I said, get a little interested when I saw this moment from Christie.
In Washington, D.C. also. And Donald Trump should be here to answer for that, but he's not. And I want to look at that camera right now and tell you, Donald, I know you're watching. You can't help yourself. I know you're watching, okay? And you're not here tonight, not because of polls and not because of your indictments. You're not here tonight because you're afraid of being on the stage and defending your record. You're ducking these things. And let me tell you what's going to happen. You keep doing that, no one up here is going to call you Donald Trump anymore. We're going to call you Donald Duck.
All right.
Now, because that was obviously prepared ahead of time, I don't know if Donald Duck is necessarily quite the zinger that he may have expected to be, but I like that he's calling out Trump. I like that he's saying Trump is showing his cowardice, not showing up on stage, defending his record, because he knows, especially with Christie, possibly only with Christie, he would be called out effectively and accurately with all of Christie's, as I say every time, all of his problems and all of his record on these different subjects. At least now he's pointing out the parts of Trump that make him so dangerous and so horrible. And Trump doesn't like that. He doesn't want to be called out in that fashion, so he's not showing up. Now, to backtrack, here was the very beginning of the debate.
Fox News Channel Dana Perino and Ilya Calderon, Univision.
Good evening. Thank you.
Hi.
Thank you.
Fox News Channel.
Good evening. The intro is the most important part. You got to practice that at least once. Come on, Stuart. Now, going back to Christie, still a Republican with all of his effective attacks on Donald Trump, you still get moments like this.
But let's tell the truth to everybody about what this is. This public school system is no longer run by the public. It is run by the teachers' unions in this country. Randi Weingarten and her crew are absolutely strangling. They are taking the worst of their members and defending them rather than advocating for our kids. And when you have the President of the United States sleeping with a member of the teachers' union, there is no chance that you could take the stranglehold.
Listen here, Chris. You can attack Joe Biden. You can attack me. But you stay the hell away from Joe Biden. If you're coming after Jill, you're coming after me. You're going to have to go through me first. Just a strange comment, for sure. By the way, Mike Pence was thinking he was some sort of comedian last night. And you'll hear him reference that joke from Christie. And it didn't go well.
Joe Biden doesn't belong on a picket line. He belongs on the unemployment line. I'm glad Vivek pulled out of his business deal.
This is a compilation of his humor, or lack thereof.
2018 in China. That must have been about the time you decided to start voting in presidential elections. I served in Congress for 12 years, although it seemed longer. Chris, you mentioned the president's situation. My wife isn't a member of the teachers union, but I got to admit, I've been sleeping with a teacher for 38 years. And
Mike, you know, people have been ridiculing Mike for not having a personality. I think I liked him better without a personality. That was... All right, no comment on that one. Here was just the bonkers back and forth that would erupt every once in a while.
They were
were there before I even showed up at the residence. You are scrapping. You are scrapping.
I'm not
Excuse me,
scrapping.
you know
Scrapping.
Here's the fact, though.
I cut taxes. I loaded up our
You wanted a gas tax increase, and then you wanted
Ladies and gentlemen, we
At the end
do
of the
not
day.
intend to go ahead like this. In fact,
It was funny. I don't think it was happening necessarily in that moment, but there was another where a big eruption would take place like that. Everyone's talking. And then you would hear DeSantis going, hey, who is this benefiting? We need to have a policy conversation. But he's just adding to the ruckus by saying that. Very confusing for sure. Then you had Nikki Haley taking a little jab at Vivek Ramaswamy.
so that we could have. And what you've got, I honestly, every time I hear you, I feel a little bit dumber for what you say. Because I can't believe that here you've got a TikTok situation. What they're doing is social media.
So she was attacking him for using TikTok for his campaign, posting political content on TikTok, which I have so many. You could say I have an infinite number of issues with Vivek Ramaswamy. Him using TikTok is not one of them. Not because there aren't real concerns with TikTok. Obviously, there are. But as long as it's a platform that is so influential, it is just logical, even though I'm happy most Republicans are shooting themselves in the foot and not trying to reach out to younger voters, it is logical if you want to reach out to the next generation to meet them where they're at. As long as that's where so many young people are. And that's what Vivek Ramaswamy, I guess, has been up to. Logical, even though I like the idea that he's being attacked for that, because maybe even less Republicans will reach out to young voters and they will resoundingly reject the GOP as they're already doing. Then to wrap up our discussion about the debate, here was the strangest moment. The moderators say, who are you going to kick off the island? Meaning, if you had to vote one person off this stage, who would it be?
Back to the final minutes. I could go another hour, but we only have a few minutes. And candidates, it's now obvious that if you all stay in the race, former President Donald Trump wins the nomination. None of you have indicated that you're dropping out. So, which one of you on stage tonight should be voted off the island? Please use your marker to write your choice on the notepad in front of you. 15 seconds. Starting now, of the people on the stage, who should be...
So then you could hear Nikki Haley there say, are you serious? And all of them eventually didn't comply, didn't want to actually answer that question, and correctly identified it to be a very childish question, a meaningless question. But then the follow-up was, okay, DeSantis, you as the second place right now in the polls contender to Donald Trump, but the first place on this stage, how are you going to close that gap? 50-point something gap in between you and Trump. And the answer was something like, votes decide elections, not polls, which is true, but polls give you a sense of where the votes are going to land. And right now, you're not exactly in the margin of error. Trump is demolishing in the polling right now. And that's super unfortunate, but that's just the situation. So something has to change. I don't know if it's voting people off the island or what, but something has to change for the eventual outcome of these elections to change. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to be a part of what makes this show possible, plus get access to the full video version of the show and get a bonus show on the weekends, you can do so by going to lukebeasleyshow.com/membership. That's lukebeasleyshow.com/membership, and there's a link in the description.